you so much for joining. I'm so glad that you all are here. That piece was a rendition of Out of the Deep I Cry to Thee, which was the first hymn accredited that Martin Luther wrote, that I could find that he wrote. He contributed the words for sure. There seems to be a little bit of discrepancy on whether this or a different piece were the actual first piece, but more sources I found told me that this was the first piece, also known as From the Depths of Woe I Cry to Thee. So out of all of the hymns that Martin Luther wrote, our current Cranberry, as I learned the other day, not red, Cranberry hymnal contains two hymns that were in the original Lutheran handbook, or Lutheran hymnal. The original Lutheran hymnal included 8 hymns, 4 of which were written by Martin Luther, 3 were written by another monk, and then a 4th written by another person who contributed. So we are going to do a little bit of digging about Martin Luther, but also finding a way to connect his journey in music through faith. But before we start, I know one of the things that I thought was interesting is if you look in the hymnals, you will see they will give you the style of music that you're singing. You'll see numbers, and you'll see all different kinds of things. You can actually find this hymn on page 600. If you wanted to turn there. And if you look at the very bottom right-hand side, if you look at the bottom left-hand side, you'll see that the text was written by Martin Luther, and the musical arrangement was by Martin Luther as well. If you look at the bottom, you will see some German right there, which would be the name of the original song or the style of song, or sometimes it'll say spiritual. Sometimes it will give you information about the rhythm. It'll say irregular, and that means that there is no definite, start and stop rhythm metrically like we think of it. If you notice, any of you that are familiar with music will notice that this piece does not have any bar lines in it. There's no meter. And it wasn't the first question, but once I got comfortable here, I asked Pastor if he knew why the Lutheran hymnal is the only hymnal that I have ever professionally experienced that does not have bar lines in it. And it drove me crazy. It drove me absolutely bonkers that there were no bar lines in the thing. And that's because this is closer to how it would have been originally written. And so the feeling of mixing different beats and meters in music is more of a very contemporary idea to the time period of Martin Luther. So he kind of wrote the song, and that right before that, if we take a field trip back to the pre-Reformation church, the music in churches, first off, church was reserved for like the high-class folk. It wasn't reserved for the high-class folk, but it was always done in Latin. Or it was done in a language that like no one but the priest, the nuns, and the monks and the high class seemed to understand. It wasn't done in the common language. So actually when Martin Luther nailed his thesis to the church door, one of the first things that he did was translated the entire Bible into German so that everyone can feel a part of the experience. He started writing hymns, translating them that were maybe some were already known hymns or different ideas, translating them into a space that everyone could understand and not just limiting church to those who were able to afford the ability to understand what was going on. And I think that speaks to us today, especially in my professional experience. The Lutheran church is really a very people-based church, a very let's go out, let's go to the people. We want to bring them in, but let's go and find them and bring them here. And then once they're here, let's make them feel like family. Let's cook them a meal. Let's, invite them over to our home. Let's fellowship with them, get to know them. And I think that since I've been here, everyone has just been trying to get to know me. Everyone has just been trying to get to know me and make me feel welcome, still checking in on me. And I'm coming up almost on 8 or 9 months here, and people are still, how's it going? Can we do anything for you? Can we make this more of a homey experience for you? And that just goes back to what Martin Luther was doing when he was arranging a lot of these hymns. If you notice, you'll see that it says music arrangement or ARR. That usually means that the hymn existed somewhere else, and this was just his interpretation of a song. You know, like Whitney Houston's arrangement of I Will Always Love You is the one that always gets played, not the original song, which was by Dolly Parton. So in those moments when you see ARR, that means arrangement. And Martin Luther did a lot of arranging, and a lot of those arrangements came from bringing the things over from the old language to the current language, which was German for him. Can we go, since you have your hymnals, can we go to hymn 504? Or no, go to 503. I'm sorry, 503. There are three versions of this. Now, while out of the depths I cry out to thee was his first hymn. Obviously, Martin Luther's most popular hymn, and the one that he's much known for, is A Mighty Fortress Is Our God. If you look at the hymn on page 503, there are no bar lines. Same idea. Once again, and the reason why they didn't really order meter like that, right before in the pre-Reformation church, when the monks were the ones really creating a lot of the music, there was a monk named Gregory the Great. And Gregory the Great was responsible for this very specific kind of chant he did. You may have heard of it. It's called Gregorian chant. And Gregorian chant was this way of singing psalms and singing praises and singing things without you necessarily having to have music in front of you. So he'd hold up his hand, and each part of his hand was responsible for a note. And that note, let's say this was do. I'm going to use solfa, something that we use today. But let's say this was do, re, mi, fa, so. Let's say we were singing the Lord's Prayer. So you could have, your higher voice monks here, or your sopranos, and your tenors, and your basses, and your altos, and he'd just point to a section, and he'd go, Lord God, bless me. And that's how they would sing through Gregorian chant. You could write it out, but I'm going to let you know, it looks like a bunch of blotches on a page, because they did a lot of, we consider it melismatic music. There was lots of, each note, each word had 15 notes to it. You'd be saying the word Lord for a whole page and a half. Lord our God. But Martin Luther really considered music to be the next closest thing to the scripture and the word of God. He thought music was a divine thing sent down from God himself, and it was his understanding that music was a way of not only worshiping God together, but feeling God's presence during that worship space. So he really actually very, very much so enjoyed music. Although we have lots of music in the hymnal that is not his, he very much so. His is more, he wanted to write things intentionally. He didn't want to write everything. He was not a musician. He enjoyed music. I mean, he was a musician, but he was not like, my ticket to the promised land is not music. He just wanted to be very intentional about the things that he wrote because of how serious he took it. If you turn, I don't know if you have to turn, but if you look, the next two pages are also A Mighty Fortress Is Our God in a much more digestible fashion. Now, of course, back in that time, a lot of the folks who were reading out of hymnals could read music or could read and understand music to some degree. Like I said, the folks that were going to church were of the higher class. As a matter of fact, so today we tune all of our instruments to A440. That means that this specific note, when the piano tuner comes in, that note vibrates at 440 hertz a second. When back in the day, the instruments of the town were tuned to the closest, largest organ. So all of our instruments, if it were today's time, we would probably have to go to the cathedral down in Gary, or maybe going over to Chicago, and that's where we would tune our instruments. Why? Because if we were playing music, we were playing in church. And if you were playing in church, you had to be tuned to the closest church's A, because there was not an agreed upon temperament. And then you had folks like J.S. Bach and all of those folks that came on, and Bach wrote this thing called the Well-Tempered Clavier, which was a song that you could play in different places, and the piano was nothing like it is now. And so when he did that, they kind of had this conversation that was like, wait, we should probably all come to like the agreement on some things and how to organize some things. So if we were living back in that time and we could understand, if we were going to church and we were musicians, we were understanding it enough to be able to sing in parts. Well, as we started to move away from that time, and as church became easily accessible to everyone, because Martin Luther did things like writing things in German and making sure everyone could understand the Mass and the liturgy, we started to also change the music. We started first with making it metrically a lot easier to understand and to comprehend. Now, your hymnal only has, let me make sure, your hymnal, for a lot of the hymns, will only have one line in it. This one is, O Living Breath of God. It only has the melody line, the soprano line. Why? Because today, most folks that go to church can't just pick up a hymnal and read the alto part. You know, and that's just how it is, and that's okay. But most folks know the melody line, or you can see it enough to know, am I making a small step up? Am I making a big step up? What am I doing there? But some of the songs do have all four parts. So I am going to teach you part of A Mighty Fortress Is Our God in 4 parts. Now, here's the thing. You don't have to be a great singer, because that was what the beauty of it was. That's what the beauty of what Martin Luther thought was the greatest part of music, is because it filled the room with a literal oral representation of God's love around us. And so he didn't care if you could sing. Probably half the monks probably couldn't sing. But it was just their way of praying and meditating and praising God. So I'm going to play a bit of it first, and then we will sing it. Now, of course, the organ would have been the principal instrument around during that time. Did pianos exist? Yes, but they were not the pianos that we know of today. So probably back then you would have encountered a harpsichord, maybe, or earlier versions of the piano that did not have as much dynamic control. This version of the piano is technically called the piano forte. Piano in music means to play something soft. Forte means to play something loud. Before this version, you could not do that as easily as you can now. Now it's just a matter of how lightly or how strict you play the instrument. But harpsichords, you cannot control the sound volume with how you play. You can lightly tap it, or you can pound your fist into it, and it's going to work the same way, because that's a plucked lectern. So there's a string, a little hammer comes up, bling, and plucks it. So that's how a harpsichord works. So no, that plucking isn't going to get any more aggressive or not aggressive. Before we sing this, the common misconception is that this is a bar song or a tavern song. It is, but not bar song as in he found it while he was having a beer and some bratwurst. Bar song refers to the song form or the song style. And the bar song that we're talking about is an A-A-B form. What do I mean by that? We all know the Star Spangled Banner? That is an A-A-B format. That means I'm going to play something, the first verse, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to play that again. Maybe different words, maybe very, very, very small alterations to the music. Then I'm going to play something completely and totally different from the original theme. And then you could also go back in the Star Spangled Banner. It sometimes go, well, no, not in that one. You can go back to it and it still be considered a bar song. You can go A-A-B-A, but this one is an A-A-B. So if we use the first part of this, "A mighty fortress is our God, a bulwark never failing." Then we're going to sing that same part again. Then we'll sing a B section. So that's what they mean by bar song. When you see bar song or you hear something called tavern song, well, it changed to tavern song just because people heard bar song and then they were like, oh, it's a tavern. No, the story's not that fun. Trust me, I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be. I went straight into this just hoping that he was just somewhere having a beer and encountering God all in one. But unfortunately, they didn't put that part in there. Come in here, honey, I got an idea. So let's learn a little bit of the soprano line first. I'm going to use the words out of the hymnal. The words in front of me that's for something different. So the one, I'm looking at page 504. 504. The one on 505 is practically the same exact thing, just different words. Those words are more updated. That one is from a publication in 2006 on 505. The one on 504 is from the Lutheran Book of Worship from 1978. So we're going to use as close to the authentic version with bar lines as we can find. So it sounds like this. The melody or the soprano part. Oh, I got to turn this back on. A mighty fortress is our God, a sword and shield victorious. He breaks the cruel oppressor's rod and wins salvation glorious. So those were my two A sections back to back. Notice they sound exactly the same. Now we're going to do something different. The old satanic foe has sworn to work us woe with craft and dreadful might. He arms himself to fight. On earth he has no equal. So when we sing it, especially if you're following a cantor, sorry for you all in the cheap seats. Sorry. I just wanted to see John, make sure he was still there and he didn't run away from me. So when you're hearing a cantor sing, the cantor is obviously going to be leading and singing that part. But you still have those other parts. And as you start to musically unpack this, none of this was written on accident. This was not, he knew what he was doing when he wrote some of these chords. And I think some of these chords are incredibly, incredibly impactful. When you're thinking of, this is the key that we're in. When he says the word fight, we sing that chord, which it shouldn't be that chord. In this key, it should be that. But he raises that, and so it makes fight stand out. It makes all of those words, son, adored, prevail, the day. It makes those words incredibly, incredibly important. Okay, let's do the soprano part. I'm pretty sure we all know it, but let's do the melody one more time. 2, 3, 4, 1. A mighty fortress is our God, a sword and shield victorious. He breaks the cruel oppression's rod, with wind salvation glorious. The old satanic foe has sworn to work us woe, witchcraft and dreadful might. He arms himself to fight. On earth he has no equal. You see how when you're prepared for that quarter-on fight, it makes it a lot more impactful. It's like, oh, wait, he's trying to tell us something. The same thing kind of happens on the word satanic woe. We get this chord, which does not, again, belong in this function. It should be here, but we sing the old satanic foe. And musically, without me diving into a theory lesson, which the hardest part of this for me is just not making this a music theory lesson. I just want you all to know that. And that's just for Kim. That's strictly for Kim. I wanted her to be here. But this just makes going to that word on foe much stronger. That's the only reason he did this. He could have gone, the old satanic foe. It still works. Musically, it's what's supposed to be happening, but when he goes, the old satanic foe has sworn, it makes it just that landing a lot stronger. Okay, do I have any altos? Where are my lower voice folks in the room? I know we got Miss Robin, Buzz, Wanda. Okay, so this is what the alto part sounds like. A mighty fortress is our God, a sword and shield victorious. Can you just do that part, my low voices? Ready and go. A mighty fortress is our God, a sword and shield victorious. Next part. He breaks the cruel oppressor's rod and wins salvation glorious. The old satanic foe has sworn to work us woe with craft and dreadful might. He arms himself to fight. On earth he has no equal. Very, 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 I hate to use the term generic, but it's a very generic alto part. And I say that with all my love to my altos, right? But it's a very, the beautiful part about a lot of hymns is once you read your part in one hymn, you know all of them. You know all of them, basically how they're going to move. That's how the alto part moves. It hangs out. It fills in what's left out of the rest of the chord. The sopranos are going to always take the melody. The bass is going to provide the foundation. And the tenor and alto are just going to kind of bop around. Usually the alto is going to harmonize with the soprano, and the tenor is left with whatever's left out of the chord. So, but we love our tenors. We love you, John. Yeah. So let's do both parts. The sopranos, you know your part. So I'm going to sing with our alto friends. 2, 3, 4. A mighty fortress is our God, a sword he knows the cruel oppressor's wrath, and wins the things of glorious. The old satanic growl has sworn to us a woe with craft and dreadful might. His arms himself to fight. On earth he has no equal. Very nice. Okay, tenors. At this point, I only pick on you because everywhere else I go, I'm the only tenor, and I'm not a tenor. So like, I'm sorry that I always get my licks back with you. All right, so tenors, you start up here. A mighty fortress is sorry. This note, I played the wrong note. A mighty fortress is our God, a sword and shield victorious. He breaks the cruel oppressor's rod and wins salvation glorious. The old satanic foe, God, has sworn to us was woe with craft and dreadful might. He can, his arms himself to fight. On earth he has no equal. Let me give you that last line one more time. He arms himself to fight. On earth he has no equal. Are you going to sing the tenor part? Or are you singing the bass? Which part are you singing? The melody? Okay. You both looked at me at the same time, with the same amount of fear in your eyes, like he's not talking to me, right? Okay, and then for my lower voiced men, my basses. A mighty fortress is our God, a sword and shield use. Sorry. Let me do that one more time. There's just something. I know what's happening. There we go. There's too many sounds coming from the organ. A mighty fortress is our God, a sword and shield victorious. He breaks the cruel oppressive rod and wins salvation glorious. The old satanic foe has sworn to work us woe with craft and dreadful might. His arms to thou fight. On earth he has no equal. Very, very, very common bass part as well. All right, I know we kind of blew through this, but can we try all four parts real slow like? Ready and go. A mighty fortress they tripped over each other. Martin Luther's hymns, as I started to look at them, they all had a common theme of reverence, of absolute authority and submission to God. His hymns to me all seem to have an underlying theme of, you know, when you need God, cry out for him. When you want God, cry out for him. When you think you don't need God, cry out for him. And he has something in there for almost every season, if you really look at it, that all share the same theme of how can we strengthen our faith with God and have that personal relationship and walk that life and do those things. Not necessarily how ceremonial, how we worship him publicly, but what are the things that you're actually truthfully doing? And in that, it seems like that was his stream of consciousness, if you will. His stream that he got from the Lord was this, God was the head of his life. And obviously being a monk, he did a lot of praying and meditating and praying and meditating. But it seems like what he got from that is that we could do more with each other. Musically, we can come together and we can sing, and that's why he made everything accessible. That's why he changed the Bible and made the Bible, and not changed the Bible. Lord, forgive me. That's why he translated the Bible. That was what was in my head. What change came out. That's why he translated the Bible into German, because he wanted it to be an experience that we could all experience, and he felt that the more that we were experiencing it, when I typed in, hey, what are some quotes about Martin Luther in music? So many of them popped up. So many of them popped up, and a lot of them were kind of based off of the same piece of quote and just different parts of the message, but more so just saying music is a direct, is next to God and next to your prayer, the most important way and the most intense way that you could receive God. And I, obviously being a musician, really believe that as well. I truthfully try my best, not only while I'm picking the music, but while I'm singing the music, I'm not just singing. This is not just a gig, for lack of a better term. This is folks come and I don't know what everyone is going through, and I don't personally need to. That's not a part of my job. My job is to just inspire and to, sometimes you just may need to hear that song because you just had a really bad week. Sometimes you didn't even realize you need to hear that song. I get comments all the time of, oh, my dad sang that, and I haven't heard that in forever, and you reminded me of my dad singing that song, And you don't have as many of those experiences when you're doing new things, but that's when you're creating those experiences. That's when we're creating those experiences for our younger congregants, and, Victor and Marty and the twins, and I try to make sure that with them that, somewhere, even if it's in the bell music or if it's in our choir music, that in some way we're learning things that they can one day tell their children and say, oh my gosh, I remember when we learned that song when I was a little kid. Some of my favorite memories from church are in church choir when I was younger, being there with my friends, and then we're talking, and then we get in trouble, and we talk about that one time that my friend thought it would be a funny idea he put this red stuff, I don't even remember what it was, and we had like these white robes, and he thought it'd be funny to bring and to put and he said, but this is how he got out of it. This is why it's a great story. He got out of it by telling his mom that he was covered and cloaked in the blood of Jesus. And after she brought him out of the bathroom and he cleared up his face from crying, I still thought it was funny. And so Martin Luther's hymns were so great to be able to look at, and especially with this is not my first experience with the Lutheran Church or the Lutheran liturgy. Um, but this is definitely my first one to where I'm picking the music and looking at it and studying it. Before the last church, Lutheran church I played for, I showed up, they told me what songs to play, I played the songs, and I went home, and we all were happy. But, now that I have to look at it, and looking at it, I look at, what are the readings, and what are the things that we're going to be reading about. Now, it's much easier for me to do this for our traditional service. Thank you. It's much easier to do for the traditional service because I basically have a book that tells me the answers. But when it comes to the contemporary service, that's kind of where I like the part of my job where I actually have to kind of go and do the work. Where can I find this same message in this song? So when I have someone sent me a text message that just said, hey, the music was great this weekend. I love those things. And not for me, but it just means the service was a complete service. You got the full meal. You got your appetizer, your dinner, and your dessert all in one sitting. And that's what I'd love to give. And it's great when it's all paired together. I'm not saying that you may not hear a song on a Sunday that, that's a good song. I just always, now when I grew up, we did our choir rehearsals, we practiced like music. Not the music for Sunday, just music. Our choir director felt that he would let the Spirit of God lead him to whatever we were going to sing on Sunday. Oh, you all took that a lot better than I did. We had no idea. He was my goddad, my uncle. I'd ride to church with him. He wouldn't listen to it in the car. He wouldn't. I had no idea. And I truthfully don't think that man did either on what we were going to do. But there was something so magical. And even when I was the music director there, I didn't know what the pastor was going to preach about. Now, we rehearsed what we were going to sing. I just didn't know what the pastor was going to preach about because we didn't follow a specific liturgical calendar. So he could preach about anything any given Sunday that he wanted to. When those songs matched up, it was like this divine experience because we all knew that it wasn't planned. Now, anything after the sermon was fair game. If he mentioned a song in the sermon, I'd play it. If he started it, and when he would get done with his sermon, and I think it's very interesting when you look at like the Baptist church, the big high talking that the Baptist preachers do to me is nothing more than just excited chanting. It's just like chanting. Like when I was at the Catholic church, I was like, oh, this is what we do. We just do it with music and much louder. we just do it with music and way, way, way louder. But if he said something in his sermon and he referenced a hymn in his sermon, that's where I was like, okay, I can make this a full-time experience for someone because we all have that moment to where we go to church and it feels like the sermon is specifically directed towards us. 2 days ago, true story, 2 days ago, we were taking my grandmother around looking at retirement facilities and whatnot, and it's that time for her. She's trying to find somewhere, but half the places around she doesn't need. Actually, she wants to come over to Wittenberg and check it out, but she doesn't need half the things that these places offer. She doesn't need the medical care, the 24/7 medical care. She doesn't, and the social side of it, she'd just rather hang out with us, truthfully. So that's where our issue is. Yeah, she'd rather just hang out with us, come and pick me up, take me back home. So we were here at, what's here at in St. John, by where you guys live? Park Place, thank you. So we were at Park Place, and the woman asked, what did I do? And I told her I was the worship and arts director here. And she said that in 2017, they had moved here from North Carolina. No, you live in North Carolina. They'd moved here from somewhere in the South. And she was pregnant, and she was going to tell her mother and dad on Christmas Day as like a Christmas surprise. Well, they were looking for a church for Christmas Eve service, so they didn't have to go to church on Christmas Day. They found Holy Shepherd. They came here. And so she was so excited to tell me that the pastor who was here for that Christmas Eve she had, of course, not told her family yet that she's pregnant. His whole sermon was about how a baby can shake up things. So the next morning when they told, her mother said, wait, so you told the pastor before you told me? Mom instantaneously remembered the whole sermon from the night. And if I, as the music director, or whatever you want to call it, can help aid in that experience, if there was a song that in that moment I could go, ooh, I know a song that's perfect for that thing, then I can help make that experience, magical. I think what I do is the luckiest. I try not to say lucky. I really try to say blessed. But in some ways, it is the luckiest job in the world because I control or I have a very big effect on your emotions while we're in church. And if I can give you a positive experience, if I can impact your emotions in a positive way, even if that means you have to cry a little bit, if I can impact your emotions in a very positive way, to me, I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I am doing what God has asked me to do, what God has told me to do, and I'm doing what Martin Luther was trying to do, which was trying to find ways to bring everyone into this. So now I have my shameless plug of bringing you into this. Wednesday night, since you're already here, is music night rehearsal here at the church. You can ring with us. We do have ringers, and if we wanted to, right now everyone is playing 2 bells. If we wanted to grow more people, I could put more tables over there, and I can give every person 1 bell, which in some songs would not be that bad of a. It would not be. You wouldn't have to be like thinking 2 different things at the same time. But if ringing is not your thing, and ringing is really easy, I pinky promise. I think out of all the ringers we have, only 3 of them, maybe 4, can read music. The rest of them can read the symbols and count. So when we're up there, that you're not looking at you're looking at a group of talented musicians. You're just not looking at a group of theoretically educated musicians. So yes, and for ringing, we make it really, really easy. I put the letters, the numbers, so you have the counts. You know which letters you're playing. You play the same letters every single time you pick up a piece of music, for the most part. If ringing isn't your thing and you want to try out singing, right now we don't have the multi-tier schedule that we used to have, and this is just to try some different things out. We're going to have 1 choir rehearsal. It'll start at 7:10 every single Wednesday. It'll go from 7:10, except for the Ash Wednesday services. It'll start about 7:30. It'll go from about 7:10 and it'll last about an hour. Right now, tonight we will be starting to work on John Rutter's Requiem. I'd love to invite you all to stay to work with us. It is a beautiful, beautiful piece. It's a 35-minute long song. Well, you sing it in parts. You sing it in there's 6 movements, 5 or 6 movements. So you sing it in parts, but it's technically 1 song. And so we'll learn it in parts. We'll learn it in pieces. We will also have some live instruments playing with us on that concert. The orchestration calls for an organ, harp, timpani, flute, clarinet, cello. And I've reached out to lots of my very talented friends to see if they would love it. And when I was saying it, I couldn't even get Rutter Requiem out before most of them salivated and said, no, I want to be a part of it. So I would love to invite you to stay to see if maybe that would be your thing. Because the more that we can bring ourselves in, the more that we can grow this fellowship, the more that we can grow this community, the more we can do, reach to people, the more we can. When you fill up a church with sound, there's no feeling like it. And if I could bottle that and buy that up, I would be richer than Bezos, richer than Zuckerberg. If you could buy the feeling that sitting in a church with people and everyone maybe it's just me. I'm an empath. So the moment you all get sad, I'm over there. I express my sadness or my emotions via music. So the moment that everyone starts, getting a little bit more into it, it's hard for me because I want to continue to get into it with you. I don't want to this is the last slide. I have to end the song now. No, but we have this beautiful church. We have this beautiful congregation. We have beautiful people that attend it, beautiful people that help run it, that help manage it, that help keep the things going. And really, the biggest chunk of what we do here is the congregation, is making sure that we are providing you all of the ways to feel as spiritually fed as possible. And I think this idea that Pastor Eric had of doing these nights are so great. And I'm looking forward to continuing to learn and doing different things on the different nights. We will have a Martin Luther part 2 to where we will be looking at more of his music. And hopefully by that time we've grown, in our numbers a little bit. So then that way we can sing more of those songs. But every second Wednesday we will be doing things. Next month it's going to be covering some spirituals and some of the spiritually coded messages that were actually hidden within inside spirituals. I mean, we all know that we all know that, why is the song blanking from me? Because I want to tell you the other part, but I'm like trying to build it up. Ride on the Chariot. We all know that Ride on the Chariot or Ride on King Jesus, while those songs had meaning to them, there's usually always an underlying meaning. We all know that Swing Low, Sweet Chariot had meaning. Do we all know the song? And it's just because we just played it this past weekend, Wade in the Water actually had a lot of significant meaning to it. So you could sing the song Wade in the Water, and it sounds very spiritual. But also when you wade in the water, people, dogs, things can't smell you anymore. So Wade in the Water was the songs that the slaves would sing to themselves to remind them that if you were being followed, to go and get in water and wade in it, because then the dogs can't follow you anymore. Like hush puppies, the snack hush puppies. Hush puppies came from, the slaves would have these packed balls of cornmeal, and they'd deep fry them, and when they were running away, they'd leave them for the dogs so that the dogs could get distracted enough for them to get to the water to wade in. So, looking at the spiritual context of some of those songs, how they helped those folks get through their time, and how we can apply those same principles to us today. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you and your time this evening. Of course. We will have bells rehearsal, even if you want just tonight, just to listen. We are learning 2 new pieces tonight, so don't expect a concert if you're going to stay. But if you'd like to listen to the bells and listen to see how the rehearsals are structured, please feel free. If you have any questions over any of the Martin Luther hymns or anything about Martin Luther, I would love to answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great evening.